Yeah, it'll look very CNN-ish. You'll be very impressed. Peace and love, everybody. You're checking out the pre-show, the before the show, before the after party, after the show is the pre-show, and you guys on that camera are checking out the fancy pants behind the scenes thing happening with Hip Hop Could Save America, the podcast live. We'll do it live. Mondays through Thursdays on whatever you're watching on. We're here Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. And I've started the stream for today just to make sure you guys are trickling in, get you enough time to get your seats, get your popcorn or your liquid lunch, whatever you guys do. No judgment zone. Thanks. You're good. Yeah. That's pretty tight. Yeah. I'm just hollering at our guest is here in the green room. I'm very happy at all the guests this month so far. Half a month, a little bit more than halfway through. Everyone's come on time. Like we're gonna go live and tell 30 people to come live with us, and we're like, it's not gonna work. People aren't gonna, and they do, and I love it. It's very, very dope. So once again, if you're checking us on the pre-show, we're about to get started momentarily. It'll switch. This is gonna be an interesting conversation. Really interesting, I think, for me personally, and usually I'm right about these things. So stick around for a minute, and also remember that if you're missing these podcasts, I'll mention this in the intro that I'm about to do, but if you're missing these live streams, you can always get us as a podcast. So that's kind of our roots here. So all right, I got some notes this time. I don't want to mess this one up. Some really, really important people are going to listen to this one. Really important entities might be tuned in. All right, let's see. We got some people, and by the way, I can see you in the comments. So if you say something in the comments, I will see it. Oh, my sticky notes. I will see it, and I will say hi to you. So as always, if you see me say something nice in the comments, see if you let me know you hear me, feel me, taste me, smell me. Everything's looking good. I always like to know. It gives me a sense of confidence. And I'm going to pop a couple links in there. Again, if you're tuning in after this live and you're saying, what is this? It's just a pre-show. You can skip ahead if you'd like. Or you can listen to me lead you into it. We got about a minute to go. I just like to give people time to trickle into the live stream. We're socially distanced, so it takes people longer to enter the venue. Gotta be very mindful of this. All right. Another minute or so. Put this phone on silent. I'm sure a bill collector will call in the middle. All right. Who we got out there? Who's checking in? Where's Eddie? Are you out there, Eddie? Where's Rissa? Where you guys at? Where are my regulars? Shouts to David Bradshaw. BS. Freestyle artist extraordinaire. Has a great series of events to teach people how to freestyle. And that works not just for people who want to be rappers. Freestyle rap as a tool for enhancing public speaking, things like that. It's awesome. We interviewed him on a podcast episode of this podcast. So you'll get the dailies here, but we give a couple of special bonuses to the podcast feed. All right. I'm going to say all that again, so we might as well get going. The guests can't see this, but there's a theme song, and there will be a theme song playing, and you'll see it later. So it's theme song time.
The thing about hip-hop today is it's smart. It's insightful. The way that they can communicate a complex message in a very short space is remarkable. And a lot of these kids, they're not going to be reading the New York Times. That's not how they're getting their information.
My hip-hop will rock and shock the nation. Hip-hop culture is more than music. Peace to you and speak the truth. Show 'em what peace can do when there reach for you. My hip-hop will rock and shock the nation. Rap is something you do. Hip-hop is something you live.
So hip-hop didn't invent anything, but hip-hop reinvented everything.
Yes, indeed. Peace and love, everyone. It's your man, Manny Faces, coming back one more time for your mind live, Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern for the month of September 2020, the live version of the Hip Hop Can Save America podcast, because I didn't think that pandemic life was complicated enough. So I decided to do this. I also decided to move, which is crazy. I'm still Newark, New Jersey, still Brick City all day. Shouts to Mayor Raz Baraka in the mix, doing some really good things, and a hip hop guy, you know what I mean, at the helm of our city government out here, doing some really good things. And I know that he's been on some news outlets talking about how Newark kind of, I guess, set a model, sort of a model for handling COVID-19 crisis in the city, you know, a pretty big city, biggest city in New Jersey, certainly. Anyway, I don't know, just randomly thought to shout him out. And he has a great spoken word piece that's out that he just released like a couple months ago. I play it on the Sunday R&B brunch sometimes on Bonfire Radio, bonfireradio.com. Shouts to them. I DJ Sundays at noon Eastern for 3 hours. R&B classics on Bonfire Radio. But we're not here to talk about me. Although I will, because I love myself. But we are here to talk to incredible guests, and these guests follow the kind of idea of this show, and this show is to highlight people and organizations who are using hip-hop in inventive, innovative, inspiring, and sometimes surprising ways. So areas like education, science and technology, politics, activism, and social justice, the fine arts. Bear with me, I'm just turning on my lamp, which gives me a better light. Okay, now I'm ready for my close-up. All these areas of intersection where hip-hop is, and generally my angle is to look for the ways that hip-hop is improving humanity and uplifting society. And in those travels, you come across things that are of interest in areas such as self-help, again, health and wellness, and even spirituality. And I've always loved to delve into this aspect of the intersection between hip hop and spirituality, the way those roads cross, because they don't often they're not often thought of as roads that cross. So that's where we're going today. In just a moment, I just want to thank sponsors and friends of the show, Funkadelic Studios. Again, if you're a musician or an artist in New York City, Funkadelic Studios is in Midtown, and they are back open, pandemic free and safe, and not free. We're not free of the pandemic, but they're reopened as per the rules of New York City, offering a safe environment for rehearsal and recording. I know a lot of musicians and artists, of course, in the New York City area, and people are itching to get back to their musical undertakings. Funkadelic Studios can help you with that, like I said, safely and effectively. Check them out. Good friends of the music scene in New York. And of course, the Newsbeat podcast, wherever you find podcasts. Newsbeat, 2 words, 1 love. But Newsbeat podcast mixes social justice journalism with original hip hop lyrics by independent artists. We like to say it's as if Democracy Now! And Black Thought had a podcast, baby. A multiple award-winning podcast that has interviews, high-level journalism about a lot of the social justice issues that we hear about, maybe don't get as much attention, maybe are glossed over in the cable news cycle, that you have to go digging for, but put together compellingly so by using a mix of hip-hop music and original lyrics. Shouts to Lexi on the check-in. Original lyrics, and that's really a compelling way to tell these stories and to bring these issues to light. Newsbeat podcast. And of course, as always, if you support this work, please, there's a Patreon page up top, patreon.com/Manny Faces. All of the blessings that you give us, monetary blessings, get forwarded to this work. All this fancy pants stuff, subscriptions, associate producers. Shouts to Cindy helping us out one more time. And shouts to the OG associate producer, Summer. So, shout outs, housekeeping underway. One bit of interesting news I'd like to just point out. Like I said, I always wanted to. Oh my God, I'm all over the place. Why am I seeing that? One bit of interesting news that I like to point out. Hold on, technologically, I'm in the wrong place. That I want to. Maybe I'll do this later since it's not working for me now. I wanted to show you that I'll just tell you, the Universal Hip Hop Museum is having a Hip Hop 4-piece live stream event, which is, I'll read it off because I screwed up here. Hip Hop 4-piece, September 21st, which is the International Day of Peace. The theme is Justice Equals Peace from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern, 1 hour of performances and reflections on peace. From the Universal Hip Hop Museum. Of course, still trying to get underway here in New York City. Pandemic slowed down the groundbreaking, I believe, for the actual physical museum. But the Universal Hip Hop Museum is continuing to do things online. I think it's really interesting. I think you should check it out. It does coincide with the International Day of Peace, and it's sort of part of the Universal Hip Hop Museum's educational program series. My friends over there, so I wanted to shout that out and bring that piece of news that you probably won't see on too many hip-hop news sites, because they don't care about stuff like that. We do. And so we'll go to it. Again, it's your man Manny Faces live Monday through Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Hip Hop Can Save America live. And what we mean by that is that if you look at hip hop in different ways, you might be able to find that it's actively helping improve humanity and uplift society. We talk about it a lot in the realm of education, that if educators who are not typically familiar with hip hop music and culture, except for the cursory level that they might be familiar with it, that if they were to take a deeper look, then they indeed might have a better understanding of how hip hop is doing this. Not theoretical. We have receipts to prove it, that in educational settings, implementing a hip hop sort of mindset or spirit, sensibilities or ethos into classroom settings actually helps improve educational output, all different grade levels, all different demographics across the board. Same thing with science and technology. You can introduce ideas that kids don't have really a lot of access to through using hip hop music. We talk about the they changed their name, but the Hip Hop Hacks and Python MC program. One of the past episodes, Richard Ashe, who works at Google, has developed a program to introduce computer coding to young people by building beats and loops, but you got to program it. And so it's a nice workshop. It's a great class, and it's really exciting, engaging. I've seen it work so many times, and just really young children's eyes light up when they're able to now learn computer programming in a way that's exciting and kind of speaks the way they're familiar with. So we see these things all in all aspects of life. I like to think that there's no aspect of life that can't be enhanced by this kind of thought process. One of the areas which is a little bit more ethereal to me personally, but I've always been intrigued by it and interested in it, is the world sort of spirituality and religion. And with that said, I came across a really interesting article maybe a month ago, written by Delvyn Case, and it's titled "Why White Christians Need Hip Hop." And I read it, and I was really intrigued by it, and I like the angle, and I like the discussion. And I said, well, since we're doing a month-long series of interviews, why don't we interview Delvyn Case, the writer, educator, who put this article together. Delvyn, thank you for joining us on Hip Hop Can Save America. I appreciate. I got you. Hold on. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us. So yeah, man, this is real. I'm a real conversational dude. So like literally, I just stumbled across this article about titled "Why White Christians Need Hip Hop." And again, if you heard my preamble, you know that this is kind of my thing. I love to introduce the idea of hip hop and its positive aspects or ways that it can be used to influence society in positive ways. And then I saw this, and I'm like, oh, this is, yes, of course white Christians need hip. But then I read it, and I got into the whole depth of it. And I'd like to ask you a few questions about it. If you could, please, for the record, just so people know, who you are and why you're writing this kind of thing. Just how do you present yourself to the world professionally, who you are and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Del Case, and I'm a professor at Wheaton College in Massachusetts. That's a small co-ed secular liberal arts college. There's another Wheaton College in Illinois that's an evangelical school. It's oftentimes in the news for a lot of, I think, the wrong reasons. We are unrelated, but it's weird because I do a lot of work on religion and music, and I work with those guys and girls over there, but it's not my school. So I teach at a secular liberal arts school. I'm trained as a classical musician, but for 20 years I've been teaching all kinds of classes about not just classical music, but also about a history of popular music. And my particular angle when it comes to pop music is teaching songwriting or teaching students how to think critically about the music of popular music. So that's actually my entree to hip hop. Actually, comes not from my own. I mean, I'm from a white guy from Maine. It doesn't come from my own cultural experience, but it comes from, in about the nerdiest way possible, my friend. Using my training as a musician, this really rigorous technical training, to suddenly hear the rhythms of a rapper's flow and just realize how extraordinarily rich and complex that is. And it spoke to me. And so I got into hip hop not because of the meaning of the words, but the way the words are put together in rhythms. And
the cadences,
yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And sort of that's the back end, you know. This article you're talking about is not about that. Though I did write another article on how if you analyze Kendrick's flow in DNA, it tells you something about the theology of the creation, but that's another story. But yeah, so my entree into hip hop is sort of like the technical side.
Yeah.
But I'm also a practicing Christian. I'm a progressive Christian, and I've taught at Christian colleges. Now I teach at a secular school, and I've seen over the last 20 years, just my students have had such different approaches to hip hop. To be honest, when I was teaching at the evangelical college before, and even before that, a prep school, it was something to be avoided. It was dangerous.
Right.
Now working in a liberal arts college, secular place now, but also working, going to a progressive urban church in Boston. You know, the hip hop is understood to be valuable, but I still don't see it showing up anywhere in like my all white church. And, you know, when people talk about sacred music, they don't talk about holy hip hop or, God forbid, secular hip hop. So anyway, that's all that.
Well, that's the intersection. That's how it all comes together. You know, and that's, I mean, this is, again, this is what I'm all about. This is what this is all about, these intersections. And it's okay to be nerdy. This is the world's smartest hip hop podcast. So, deemed so by me, but nice. No one's challenged me on it yet. And we do have more PhDs per guest capita, I think, than anything. So I'm perfectly okay with that. You talk about learning coming into rap or appreciating rap for its technical flows. Rakim always attributes his, iconic sort of transformative flow to rhyming like jazz music, kind of borrowing some cadences and borrowing some flows from jazz. So, I mean, that's, I think, a way that a lot of us got, Rakim being sort of, for me personally, sort of the real entree into rap, where it's my real we liked it. It was cool. Things were happening. But when you heard Rakim, it was different. And so I think a lot of that comes from that. The article, which I had on the screen, I'm gonna put it back up again for people to see this, is first of all, it's published on Patheos.com, which is explain your relationship with them.
I understand it's the biggest blogging service for religion in the world, at least English language, I should say. Uh-huh. And, it hosts bloggers, columnists in all kinds of Christian traditions, Roman Catholic, evangelical, progressive. It's got Buddhist, it's got Hindu, it's got atheist, it's got New Age. So if you're interested in spirituality, it's just got a whole bunch of columnists that write about everything. I'm in the general Christian category. I'm more progressive in my theology and politics, but I figure I talk a lot about just all the ways that music relates to God, basically. Pop music, classical music, church music. And that's what Patheos is, a platform that allows us to publish and promote the stuff.
What prompted this article? What prompted, we'll go into obviously some of the things you talk about it, but you talk about in it rather, but what was the genesis?
Yeah.
What was the thought process that kind of got you leading in this direction? Were you writing about other things similar? Did you hear something that just aha moment? What happened?
Well, there are two answers. Years ago, that the idea for this article and a bigger project came to mind when I was asked to speak in the chapel service at the evangelical college I was teaching at, and I had 500-600 students, captive audience. Literally, I mean, they couldn't leave it. It like sign out if they wanted to leave. It's chapel, and you got to go, and it's part of your grade. And I realized I was the new guy on campus, and I was brought in to teach classes on secular music, which is kind of a stretch. Mm-hmm. And so I figured, what can I say to these 18, 19, 20-year-old students. By the way, it was Eastern Nazarene College was the college, and it actually at the time was the most diverse Christian college in the country, as far as I know. So it wasn't like it was an all white audience.
Right.
At the same time, basically, the long and short of it is that I figured, I got an hour to talk to these people, 30 minutes. I decided to play. I was going to play "Fuck the Police," but I decided that'd be too much to use the F word in chapel. So I think
that's progressive religion.
That would have been.
We're talking
yeah, would have lost my job. It's 2004 too. It's like I'm like pre-Kanye almost. And I honestly I can't remember what I played now, but I played something maybe Public Enemy without curse words.
Okay.
Because curse words for conservative Christians are like kind of the worst thing you can have. It's like the number one thing that turns people anyway. And I just wanted to say, like, look, this music is around you, and you're probably not listening to it because you think it's got curses, it's got sex,
right?
You know, and you don't give it. And you've been told by pastors that it is of the devil,
right?
And this is not just the white students. Was a huge movement in the Black Christian church that's anti-hip-hop for a variety of reasons.
Yep.
You know, anyway, and I was like, look, I'm going to play you a song without curses, but I want you just to listen. Just listen for a sec. And the idea, and it's social realism. This is a documentary about people whose lives you probably can't imagine, but it is surrounding you, and it's on the radio. Don't just turn your mind off and dance to it. This is poetry and it's content. And so I sort of preached, if you will. I said, look, this is I played the song. I said, look, how do you respond as a Christian? Here's a testimony of the way that a group of people in an environment, in a culture, okay, in a location, is crying out for justice, is testifying to a world that is not just, and that is crying out, not for saving, but just testifying, literally speaking the truth.
Right.
Right? And here you are as Christians listening to Jesus say, suffer the little children. If anyone gives me food, like you gave, it's like, you know, if anyone, you do whatsoever you do to your brother, that you do unto me.
Right.
Love your neighbor. I'm like, look, your neighbors are speaking the truth on the radio, and you're turning it off because you're afraid of some curse words. So, you know, that was a while ago. Now that's pre-Lecrae.
Right.
That's before Kanye went Christian.
Right.
There's Chance. You know, there are Christian rappers who are secular stars now.
Right.
And that's different. So, you know what I mean? It's a different story, and they're being accepted. Now, what I was working on a really big academic project, which is actually coming out. I'm writing about it in the December issue of Sojourners, which is a progressive Christian magazine.
Sure.
It's coming out in end of November. It's an article on this project, which is called Pop Songs That Have Jesus in Them. Secular pop songs that have Jesus as a character. So I found about 500 secular songs in the last 50 years. And in that research, I found about, I found about 100 secular hip-hop songs that have Jesus as character. I looked at all different genres. And I found there were a lot of interesting things about the ways that non-church folk think about Jesus. But the coolest thing I found was that it was in hip-hop that you see Jesus grabbed and held up as an ally, right? As the representative of someone who stood with the oppressed,
right,
and who challenged the way society was.
Right.
Who was a martyr for the cause of, frankly, peace and love,
Sure.
Back to Africa Mbabata, whatever it's going to be, and it was awesome to see that this is not like Christian hip hop coming out of wherever. Like, this is not subject to like the imprimatur or the stamp of approval of like pastors or record producers who go to church, who got to like sell to Christians. This is like rappers like JPEG Mafia or Cupcake or Jody Badass or Nas or YG or Tupac or C-Strugs or Denzel Curry, just talking about marshaling Jesus, saying, hey, if Jesus were around, Jesus would be on my side.
Right.
So it reminded me, hey, you know what? I need to dig into these songs and see what kind of truth is being spoken to me in my community from outside.
Right. That's interesting. You mentioned Denzel Curry. I like this because a lot of times, and I love that you mentioned, Joey Badass, Denzel Curry, and others, because a lot of times folks who are not, of or, in the middle of hip hop culture who speak about it from the outside tend to do what you started to do, which was play, the old standards, the olden goldies, of hip hop and social justice, the Public Enemies, the KRS-Ones, and, maybe even if you're really going to the Brand Nubians or the Poor Righteous Teachers, but they stay in that era. And I think that you pointed out, and again, if you're talking about this subject, you might go up to Kanye with Jesus Walks and kind of say, you know, that's the end all be all. To go digging like that, I think is really is valuable, but also necessary to show that this is also a current and perhaps even more so now occurrence. You mentioned Denzel Curry. Can you talk about the song that you quote in the article and when the factors of this whole, you know, these theories and how they came up?
Yeah, the basic idea about this is a song Speedboat, which if you've seen the video, it's incredible. It's an amazing song. And you know, if you don't know the track, you know, pause the podcast and, and listen. But you know, in the hook, he sings, "Jesus, please deliver us from evil. Please pray over my people. What you see in life's illegal." Mm-hmm. Okay, I mean that's a testimony. Right. And if you know a little bit about Curry's background, you know, he was touched by the death, I think, of his older brother. I'm sorry. He's from, you know, he's from the same Miami neighborhood as Trayvon Martin. You know, it's not like this guy doesn't know. He's testifying from personal experience about what's going on. Now, I don't know what his religious background is, right? And I'm not really super interested. What I'm interested in seeing people who are using the name Jesus outside of the church as a means of getting people's attention and saying, hey, you know, a bunch of you people might have think you've got Jesus in the pocket. I don't think so. You know, that's what I think too. So I basically said, you know, you're sitting in church on Sunday, no matter what kind of church you go to. It could be a black church, could be a white church, whatever. And you know, you're sitting quietly, at least before the pandemic. You're sitting in church, and like you're hearing the music go through, you're hearing the message from the pastor go through you. But literally at the same time, the radio waves from your local hip hop station are going through your body. That's how it works. Like, now you can't pick up on it, right? But it's kind of a metaphor for like this invisible power that goes through our bodies. And I basically took that as a metaphor, and I said, look, how as Christians, how can we pay attention to that? You know, that message, because basically in our lives, a lot of times we either don't look at rap or hip hop because of the language or sexism, whatever, violence, or maybe we're just not interested. You know,
I would say which is you know, a lot of, we don't want to discount act like we're not sugarcoating it. Sure, but also in some of those messages, this exists as well. Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. And this song does not have any. It doesn't have any sexist language, and it doesn't have any curse words. Right. In fact, the hook ends with, "I don't want to use my Desert Eagle," which is, you know, a rifle. Sure. And he's basically praying to Jesus and saying, you know, please, I'm asking for help, but I don't know if you're gonna help. Like, I don't know if I have that faith. I don't know if you're gonna step in. Which is a powerful challenge. It's one that's really common among secular hip hop artists who look at God and Jesus and say, you know, trust God but pass the ammunition kind of thing. You know, right? Which has an interesting connection with the African American spirituals, which are oftentimes saying, I know that God's around because I'm still around. The proof that God is around is that I'm still around. And hip hop is different, right? So what I like is this is a really super honest prayer. That basically says, I'm praying to you, but I don't know even if you exist, if you care, or if you're going to come. So I'm packing heat just in case, right? So I'm basically saying, okay, Christians, you need to listen to this, because first of all, it's a testimony to a world that, frankly, a lot of us suburbanites don't know. Secondly, how many of us actually pray this honestly? I guarantee you I know what? I've been a Christian my entire life, and I've struggled with doubt. But most of the prayers you find anywhere, they don't admit to doubt anywhere. Interesting. And here is a secular artist, I don't think he's religious, being willing to pray in public in front of millions of people and admit that he doesn't really know. So I'm saying, hey, Christians, we need this song and other songs because A, it testifies to a reality that we are supposed to care about because of Jesus, and B, because it models a kind of honesty and authenticity when we confront God that we rarely find. And do you think that's valuable? I've been in church settings. Shouts to Greater Rescue Church of Jesus Christ in South Jamaica, Queens, Guy R. Brewer Boulevard. I am saved Pentecostal once in my past. I have some understanding of these things. When you say the praying with the doubt, that's not a bad thing. No. And explain why. I guess you always feel like you have to be so sure. You have to have faith. You have to be 100% sure that this is going to happen. But that's not necessarily honestly how people feel. Well, it's not how people feel. Right. And it's also not what the Bible says about prayer. Because if you read the book of Psalms, Old Testament Hebrew Bible, you know,
third of those are Psalms of lament. There's someone, King David or whoever, turning to God and saying, "Where are you, Lord?" Check out Psalm 13. How long, O Lord? How long? That's it. That's a prayer. That's a prayer you look to God and you say,
What's up?
I know you're there, but where are you?
Right.
I mean, that's really not any different than, there's a lot of violence in the Bible. There's no desert eagles, but still, it's the same kind of thing.
Right.
And same with the New Testament. Jesus, Jesus says that faith is just getting up and following him. When he said, "Come follow me" to the disciples, they didn't say, he didn't say, "First, let me test your theology."
Right.
He just said,
Right.
"Follow me." And it's up to you. And so a lot of the church has sort of said that prayer is like, you got to be right with God before you can come to God. I've heard that a lot. That is not biblical. And God just wants you to turn to him or her, as it may be.
Right.
So I love the fact that it's a non-church person who's showing us how to do it.
Yeah.
Honestly.
You mentioned in the article, you say, by his own admission, Denzel Curry is not a Christian, yet still he prays. And you say that is real faith. As the Bible says, quote, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen." Like you said, showing kind of how to do it. Like, I'm praying. I don't even believe in I'm praying, but because I'm praying, I'm trying to have that faith.
Absolutely. I mean, that's from the letter to the Hebrews that was, how can it be if you don't have faith in like gravity because gravity's there.
Right.
Like, that's not faith.
Right.
Right. In fact, faith without doubt isn't real faith, because then it's not faith. If that makes any sense,
Right.
It's something you believe in. It's different than belief. Belief is like assenting to something with knowledge. Faith is feeling it inside. And faith is what artists traffic in, That is what a great hip hop artist, a poet does, a visual artist, musical composer, whatever, is you create something because you believe in it, you have faith in it, and then you put it out to the world with the faith that it's going to make a difference in some way and impact people. There's no way to know that. But if you don't have faith, you're not going to do it in the first place. I
got faith that doing a damn live broadcast every day for a month is going to be helpful. I get it, of course. Absolutely. Of course. That's partially why I love this. Again, not whether Denzel Curry is a church guy or not. I mean, he's not Lecrae. So like you say, he's not coming across as, this isn't my main message. This is a part of my life, a part of my overall belief structure. I'm confused. I'm confused. Not only, and here's one thing. He's not asking necessarily for help for himself. In some ways, he's asking for help for his community, for his country, for his people. You make a distinction between that in the article as well. Can you speak on that a little bit?
For me, what struck me particularly about this song is that, if you're a white Christian and you listen to this song, you're implicated in this, because let's be very clear. This country was created by white Christians, white Protestants, and the redlining, the welfare state, the fear of the welfare state, I should say, all the things that, criminal justice system, these are all created in order to either perpetuate racism or to shovel money in the people who already have property and money. And that's the white Protestants. And it has been for, 400 years. You know what? So when he says, "My people, what you see in life's illegal," that is looking, and if you're a white Christian, what you should hear is, look at the world you made and have kept me in.
Right.
I'm sorry, that is the truth. And there are a lot of progressive Christians, Barack Obama, and Hillary Clinton, but she brought a Methodist minister with her on the campaign trail, but you know what? She never talked about it because that's just not her thing. But the point is that there are progressive Christians who, despite what you see on TV all the time, Jerry Falwell, whatever, there are people that connect Jesus' message of social justice with actual structural change in society.
Right.
And so my point is, hey, white Christians, you can listen to this, you can feel sad for people who are living in communities of color that are, poor and violent. You really need to think, how do I change it? Because it's my fault.
Interesting. So that leads to the biggest question about when you publish something like this, even being sort of, as you say, a progressive in this aspect of religion. What's the response? What's the response?
The article's been up for about a month. I have not got a lot of comments on it, but a lot of people have read it.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think that, you look in the Google Analytics, people spend like 3 minutes on it. So they're reading the whole darn thing.
Sure.
And so that means, and at least they're not so pissed off that they leave a comment.
Which they would if because you've seen comment sections.
Yeah, I know. I think just because it's a new blog, people aren't finding it. But
okay.
I should say that my own personal right now, my personal response to this article and this project has been sort of the most significant because I'm sort of new to this.
Yeah.
I'm working on another project that's going to specifically hone in on these songs, and they could be hip hop tracks, but also could be other tracks by other artists and other genres.
Right.
That are doing this same thing, and they testify through popular music for a use of Jesus as a martyr for social justice, which of course he was, but we don't tend to look at pop music for that. So I've been excited and encouraged to learn more of this music and get it out there. And in fact, my article for Sojourners looks at a number of songs in various genres that do this.
Yeah.
That say sort of wake up, Christians, listen, pay attention, and then act.
I guess historically, because Christians, the devil music, all the way back to all, jazz and pop and rock has always been music we just don't pay attention to. So more holistically, when we say what's the response, and you're waiting for the floodgates to open, as it were, with maybe one way or the other, or just maybe you've just planted a seed for now, and that's great, and you're going to build off of this idea. But historically, because the general religious public has been told, like you said in the beginning of our talk, to stay away from this, to ignore this. Do you think that there is, I know this varies wildly from, area to area, religious faction, and just whether you're progressive or more traditionalist or whatever it might be. Do you think that because of the sort of polarization politically, the way religion kind of falls into that, like, the social justice centric world we find ourselves in these days, particularly the pandemic, is the religious community more or less open to some of these ideas, looking into other areas to find that perspective, and perhaps what I think we all hope for, I think you're saying, I think I would say, is to help change, evoke change, incite some change, get involved with it from, using your religious sort of ideals as fuel. Do you think that this is happening more, or is everyone really just hunkered down and they're not trying to they're not trying to change their minds about anything right now?
Well, I can only speak for, my corner of the Christian world, though I do work in sort of, I know a fair amount about the evangelical world, but I'm situated more in the progressive main line.
Yeah.
The fact is that young people, this train has left the station. White evangelicals are still they're listening to hip hop, secular hip hop.
Yeah.
And what that means, especially with Black Lives Matter, is there are more and more hip hop artists who are writing tracks about these issues. But even Bruce Springsteen coming out with with a bunch of songs about protest songs, and everyone's doing it, right? Young people are listening to this stuff, and the messages are getting through. They're looking at these artists, these secular artists, as secular prophets in a sense. Speaking truth to power. I think what's interesting is that, pastors these days, the youngest pastor you're going to get in like a mainline church is like in their 30s or 40s. Those people still grew up with hip hop, but you're still not seeing it. I think there's still a resistance to connect, to bring secular hip hop into the church at all. Right. I don't know if in 20 years that's going to change because so many young people, so many teenagers are seeing hip hop artists being at the vanguard of these movements. They're going to say, "What? We're talking about social justice and Black Lives Matter, and we're not talking about hip hop." That's going to seem ludicrous. Well, it seems ludicrous now. It's going to seem ludicrous in 5 years. Right. I would say that the biggest stumbling block for all Christians in hip hop is sexism and misogyny, because that's a massive. That's a thing that evangelicals and mainliners and progressives can agree upon. The progressives don't care about the language. We see the violent imagery as being not justified. We see it as being poetic responses, right? But we all come together on the misogyny and the sexism, and as we should. But look, that's not all songs by all artists. So you can't just say I don't like hip hop because some songs,
But you can't listen to country then either.
100%. You know what? You can't listen to opera.
Right. Exactly.
You cannot. Opera is all about it's all about the things that Christians are supposed to avoid: sex, the occult, violence, even
true.
everyone's always dressing up like women and men. Cross-dressing is called.
All these
It's a
things.
huge part of opera,
Right.
and it's no, you got to look at each individual song or piece, and say how do I respond as a person of faith?
Yeah.
That phrase, "What would Jesus do?"
Right.
David Pryor. Jesus would listens to all the music of all his people, which is everyone.
Yeah.
And I think he would be pretty pissed off by what he's hearing testified.
Right. The root cause, not the symptoms.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going to happen, but this project, even though it's academic in nature,
Sure.
I'm looking at turning into some kind of resource that maybe could be used even by like youth group leaders, maybe churches looking to do some, we call it faith formation, like adult Bible study. Maybe there's some way to bring in pop culture,
Yeah.
even hip hop, in a way that can get it into the ears of people who might be initially resistant,
Yeah.
but then they just need to sit down and listen.
Yeah.
You and I both know that if all you need to do is listen to this music, and it's
yeah.
it's extraordinary, right?
I often
But
I've often thought about taking, without listening, written, just some segments, and say, pick the vile, artistic art form. And, you could pick from different things, and you might find like there's real poetry, there's real emotion, and there's real, as you say, testimony found in hip hop lyrics if you just read or listen. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not, look, there are not a lot of hip hop songs about Jesus, comparatively, but there are tons of songs that raise issues of social justice.
Right.
Those are also songs Christians need to hear. I just happen to pick the songs about Jesus because it's a little bit of a entree.
Right, right.
Like, hey, you're using my Savior and tell me what he means.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes,
mix
you are.
you mix the vegetables with the mashed potatoes. You got to,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just if you guys are just tuning in and just checking us out. Of course, this is the live version of Hip Hop Could Save America, the podcast with me, Manny Faces. And today we have Del Case. He's the author of an article which I found fascinating. I found really timely. Why White Christians Need Hip Hop. As a professor and an author and an academic, and he's studying these things as well as writing about them. This was in the Patheos blog. We have it shown on the screen. I'll have it linked in the show notes. It's a really fascinating look at why white Christians need to pay attention to hip hop, not because they need to go out and shake the tail feathers, but because they need to go out and they need to understand that this is, as we've been talking about, sort of testimony from God's people. You don't turn your back on people who are going through it, coming even if that messaging might be not to your taste, as we talk about. And I think that's the value in paying attention to hip hop, more than just a cursory look at it. I mean, even the egregious example you cited in the past, F the police, as in the title, and just so blatant and raw. I mean, but it's social commentary that is still being referred to today. Matter of fact, still being certain campaigns on a national political level are still trying to use it to tarnish the other. It's still a part of the zeitgeist, and that's because it's such a powerful social commentary that has been found in hip hop from its early days, from its often cited as the number one hip hop in history, The Message, full of social commentary. But as Del Case points out, Denzel Curry, Joey Badass, a lot of other modern hip hop artists who are not strictly labeled as, or labels themselves as Christian, the Lecraes of the world, are actually still bringing religion, if not religion, spirituality, sort of a these ideas into their music, and it should be paid attention to by the white Christian world more so. And that's the argument that's made in this article. I thought it was pretty fascinating overall. I was catching people up.
Yeah, no, and I was just say that my particular interest, I came upon this is by finding, secular hip hop songs that actually feature Jesus in them,
right,
and invoke him specifically, because
Yeah.
that is going to grab the listener. I mean,
Yeah.
what Christians should listen to hip hop even if Jesus isn't mentioned, because for a lot of reasons, especially because of the testimony it provides to communities that have been oppressed. But it's so interesting when you see these artists who are not necessarily Christian using the name Jesus and what that sort of means and how they think of him.
Right.
And a lot of the times, for many of the songs, Jesus is actually held up as this symbol of power, of ultimate power. There are lots of hip hop songs where rappers compare themselves to Jesus.
Right.
Let's not forget that Old Dirty Bastard wanted to rename himself Big Baby Jesus and was,
Right.
I believe the judge said no. But the you know, but the point is like, so and that's really interesting because it's interesting how rappers will, when they cast around for a symbol, Jesus is an interesting choice because think about this: he was poor,
Right.
he was homeless, he
Right.
was an oppressed minority, right? Where did his power come from? His words. He had a following. He was a martyr. I mean, it's not surprising that rappers see themselves, but they also recognize that his power could not be denied, and it has lasted. I mean, there is no better metaphor for the kind of power a rapper really wants. Like of course you hear about the Jesus piece, right? Which
Right,
is also
exactly,
interesting. Gold, right?
Yep,
But that is going to, end up in a trash heap someday. But the word of God, or the words of rappers, that lives on forever,
That's an interesting analogy. We often talk about, hip hop has given, voice to the voiceless and all these things. But I think that at the core of, I interviewed Dr. Lauren Kelly, and she was talking about, she had a bunch of I forget the grade level that she was teaching, and they were talking about the aspirational value of hip hop. Some of the braggadocious songs, the songs that might be looked at as misogynistic. I think it was all I want for my birthday is a big booty hoe. And that thing came up, and she said, this isn't really aspirational. Is that what you want? Like, do you really want to have a big booty stripper on your butt? Like, is that really the like, you need better goals, my friend. But she said, and this was really, to me, this stood out a lot. I'll never forget this. She said that the young people were like, no, but we want to have the power to have that if we want. We don't want that, but we want to have it if we want it. That's that kind of true aspiration, that kind of true power that you talk about. The power of what I'm trying to tell you is, I don't necessarily want all these things. I don't want to be. Do you think any of the, biggest, gangsterish, cats that are talking about shooting up everybody, do you think that's the limit of their aspirations? They're saying, if I have to live in a place where I can be killed or be killed, I'd rather not be killed. Thank you very much. That's what I want. But if I was to have a ceiling broken, then my aspiration would be sky's the limit, to quote Biggie. And I think that what you say is the power in the words is trying to express all that.
Absolutely. And it's just surprising. You think, Christians think of Jesus as powerful, but we tend to think of him as powerful, like, because he's part of God and he's coming back at the end of time, right?
It's magic.
Right. But like,
it's like a magical power. I don't need to, I'm not dissing anybody, but that's kind of,
yeah.
Right.
But the Jesus of hip hop tends to be, the power, the eternal power, sort of the theological view, ends up being mapped onto the actual man, and who he was, like, in his daily life, whereas he did not have power while he was alive.
Right.
He didn't. He was killed,
Right.
Power came after he left. Right. And that's not good enough for a hip hop artist. They want the power now, and the opportunity, whatever you want to call it. So it's interesting to see that, like, anyway, it gets into the weeds of theology, but basically it's cool to invoke Jesus as a presence, as a source of power right now by looking at his earthly life,
Right.
rather than like he's going to come in glory or he's up there with God, doing miracles in my name, which is also, it reminds me that there are not a lot of hip hop songs that you show Jesus as someone who will step in and help, like the blues or gospel. Usually the Jesus of hip hop, I think I've only counted about maybe 15 hip hop songs in the last, 40 years that really view Jesus as like someone that people pray to for help right now. Now, Speedboat's actually an example of that, but of course it's mitigated by the idea of like, well, I'm still packing heat though. Right? So you very rarely see songs that, I guess you'd find them in Christian hip hop.
Yeah, I was gonna let me as we start to wind down, I just want to make sure that we cover the very impressive field of Christian hip hop, and it gets labeled as it's kind of separated from hip hop. I guess it has to be. We categorize everything in music, but Lecrae is no less an MC than anybody else. That you could cite. How effective is Christian hip hop at dealing with some of these things that you mentioned that you find in sort of non-Christian hip hop, the doubt, the prayer with doubt, I'm praying, but I'm still packing, like artists like Lecrae and others who you might have come across. How do they deal with that sort of real humanistic factor of being religious?
You know, I don't think I can answer that. I don't listen to a lot of it nearly
Yeah.
enough to speak on it. And I don't want to just surmise. What I can say is that if you look at someone like Chance or Lecrae,
Yeah.
the reason why they're well known is because they're authentic, because they're honest.
Right.
And in songs like "How Great" by Chance, I mean, that quote's a real classic, praise song. You probably even know it's it's white from the black church, but the white church these days as well. There are songs that there are songs by all these guys that they aren't just like ideology. They're honest and authentic, and so those are the songs that I look to as being really interesting bridges, because they do a good job. Now, I don't know if Lecrae has been kicked out by the black church community or I don't know if you put like an Aretha Franklin. I don't think so. I mean, like when she went secular, people were just like, she was accepted back. But the point is that, I don't listen enough Christian hip hop to know what happens. Like if you're like sort of middle of the road Christian hip hop that only Christians listen to, I don't know what's going on there.
Right.
But it's awesome to me that you have unapologetic Christians who are releasing records that speak to all kinds of people.
Yeah.
Because they're honest and they're authentic. I don't know how you can have hip hop or any art that's not like that.
And I think that gets to the heart of your piece. Again, why white Christians need hip hop. The article Del Case wrote for the Patheos blog. We'll link to it. You can search for why white Christians need hip hop. There are not a lot of articles with that title, so you'll probably find it. But I think that gets to the heart of what you're saying is, because this is an aspect of humanity that is documented, usually documented well, but well is a subjective term, but documented that, as you said earlier on, is testimony to what people are going through, perspectives, looking at it from another way, checking on your neighbor, even though you have different paths, you come from different backgrounds. That is supposed to be, I don't know, but supposed to be the Christian way. And that's why this is important. Yeah. You wouldn't want to just keep ignoring this music. You say here at the end of the article, somewhere, I had it. You said something about it's real easy. Here it is. You said it's easier than ever for white people to ignore hip hop. But if we close our ears to it, we are doing something worse, denying even its status as sound. And in doing so, we commit violence against some of the most powerful prophetic voices in our society today. Giving, kudos to the documentarians that speak through hip hop, but also warning against relegating them to simply noise.
Absolutely. I got one quote that I think would speak to that, and this is from the recent Run the Jewels record.
Yeah.
This is a track, "Walking in the Snow," and this is the quote. I'm not going to rap it, and there might be a curse in it, but
that's fine.
It says, "Pseudo Christians, y'all indifferent. Kids in prisons ain't a sin. Shit, even if one scrap of what Jesus taught connected, you'd feel different. And then later on, all of us serve the same master as all of us." That's literally saying, say, pseudo Christians, and that should make me think how, what I say in the article or other places I've said, again, Jesus said, "Follow me." He didn't say believe this or not. He said, literally in the Bible said, "Follow me," and then they did, and then they learned about Jesus. So white Christians, basically, if you think you're a Christian and you want to follow what Jesus did, well, he would pay attention to the powerful testimony of a community that has been oppressed. I mean, he was Jewish. He listened to Jewish people at the time, and he was murdered for it.
Right.
Christians today need to have our ears open and make sure that we're responding, we're following Jesus by listening and then by acting.
Well, I appreciate that message. I appreciate that message being amplified, because of what happens in hip hop. We are advocates for exactly the things you wrote about in this article. Like I said, testimony, not only to a way of life or circumstances or stories that people are going through that are often overlooked because of some of the negativity that might be attached to it, the wide brush that's painted over hip hop. I appreciate you doing this. I appreciate you thinking this way. I appreciate you writing about it and sharing it with a community that I think has maybe never looked at this in large, looked at this in this way.
Well, thanks for having me.
Don't be Christian in name only.
Yeah, that's right.
As they say, right?
I think you just better trademark that soon.
Right, maybe I'll get that domain name real quick. Del Case, once again, how can people find you, follow up? Obviously, again, the article is on Patheos.com. Where are you personally? Where can people say, oh man, thank you so much for this. I want to say thank you and all those things.
I got a website that has all my music on it. It's delvyncase.com with a Y, Delvyn with a Y. But my Patheos blog is where I write all different kinds of music and its relation to particularly Christianity, pop, classical, sacred, and that's my blog is called Alleluia: Music and the Christian Life, and it's on Patheos.com. You can find it there.
I'm showing it on the screen, and if you're listening on the podcast, please do check it out. There's great, valuable insight about the intersection between, like you say, pop music, including hip hop, and Christianity, spirituality and religion, and all of those things attached to it. I found it very fascinating. I'm so glad I stumbled upon it. I'm glad to have gotten even increased perspective from you, sir. Thank you for your time, and thanks for hanging out with me today.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, right on. There you go, Del Case. You can hang out and watch the end, or you can go and and do your thing. Del, thank you so much for your time. Once again, Why White Christians Need Hip Hop, available on the Patheos.com blog, Alleluia: Music and the Christian Life. Del Case, man, made a great case, for why white Christians need hip hop, and that's something that I mean, it's so up my alley. It's so what we teach here. It's so what the hip hop ed movement says in education. It's so what the hip hop hacks movement says for science and technology. It's so what Dr. Ian Levy and others who have been working with Elliot Gann and J.C. Hall and other folks throughout the country and world have been doing to try to use hip hop in a authentic way, a positive way to engage young people, especially in mental health counseling and mental health therapy. It's what we say. These intersections exist. Hip hop has been, I talked to, on this show, we've talked to Sage Salvo, who teaches English through hip hop and tying it into Shakespeare and showing that there's, sort of connections between literary arts of old and literary arts of new. Del Case makes a good argument for the same thing for hip hop and how Christians are supposed to look at the world, and you can get that from some of the words and lyrics and songs and singing and power and just compelling nature that hip hop brings to the forefront. Please read the article. We'd love to know what you think about it. You can contact us through hiphopadvocacy.org. That's a center where you can find all the past episodes of this podcast live series, which is happening in September. The podcast as a whole, Hip Hop Can Save America, wherever you find podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, et cetera, et cetera. Do subscribe there. We're dropping special bonus kind of episodes that are podcast feed only. They were conducted not through a video format, so they're not conducive to video. So we're popping them over there. One coming up, I think this weekend, I'm trying to finish it up, actually also delves into sort of a spirituality, religious aspect. So if you like this, you'll like that. Pay attention to the podcast feed. And if you have any questions, comments, or whatever, again, hit us up through hiphopadvocacy.org, the Center for Hip Hop Advocacy, working to show all the innovative, inspiring, and sometimes surprising ways that hip-hop is improving society and uplifting humanity. My name is Manny Faces. If you value this work, please, patreon.com/Manny Faces. Every patron gets a very special prayer. Well, they do. But yes, we're not giving things away, but we are supporting this work. Actually, that's not true. You can sponsor this just like Funkadelic Studios and Newsbeat. They have done so. But if you're a patron through the Patreon account, I'm also kind of giving like free plugs. So if you're listening and you have a thing that other people like you might like, then the smart thing to do is become a patron. And then you'll have an opportunity to share your project or your product or your brand or yourself with my audiences. So I appreciate that. Mostly it goes to, again, making sure that we can keep doing this. Certainly as a podcast past September, but this video thing was kind of cool and it worked. So we'd love to take it to a bigger platform. We'd love to amplify and improve it. With your help, we can do that. Thanks once again. I'll be back tomorrow. No, tomorrow's Friday. I won't be back tomorrow. You will get a bonus, maybe 2 bonus episodes of this podcast on the podcast feed this weekend. And the one thing you can do if you don't Patreon, it's perfectly fine. I get it. It's crazy. It's pandemic. Is just share this episode. Share this and say, this is how you talk about hip hop on a real smart level. This is the world's smartest hip hop podcast. I may not be the world's smartest hip hop journalist, but I bring on the people that are really, really, really smart. And they talk about how hip hop can improve society and uplift humanity. My name is Manny Faces. Thank you very much for joining us. Once again, all the things. Go back, bring it back, rewind, share it with all your friends, neighbors, supporters, and haters. And I'll be back Monday, right? Today is Thursday, right? Let me just check. Today's Thursday. I'll be back Monday. We'll be back, God willing. Thanks for watching. And again, thanks to Del Case for coming through and sharing his wonderful perspective. Go check out that article. It's pretty dope. All right, y'all. I'm out of here.